Hello, today we will be co-presenting this webinar, Building Student Resilience Through a Community of Learning. My name is Paula Elliott, I'm a health visitor, practice educator and nurse teacher.
And my name's Pamela Shaw, I'm a health visitor, practice educator and a Queen's nurse. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this webinar, which will focus on building student resilience through a community of learning. Before I start, I'd like to thank our organisation, Bradford District Care NHS Foundation Trust, and special thanks to EFL for organising this. The webinar hopes to look at conveying the benefits of setting up and running a student support group. It will also show how it helps to get the best from our students. It also wants to demonstrate that the framework that we use can be utilised for students of all different nursing disciplines, as well as students from allied health professionals. This slide captures an image of our cohort 2016 to 2017. It shows the students being flanked by practice educators who have supported them throughout their training. This presents a closed group, which means it's fixed on the number of attendees who can be part of that group, thus ensuring a safe and supportive environment.
The next slide looks at the background for the group. We started to prepare in 2010 for the first group, which was to be delivered in 2011. We knew with the implementation plan, the self-visitor implementation plan, that we were going to get a large cohort of students who were going to be long-armed with mentors. We wanted the group to provide a uniform education for those students so that all the key learning would be covered by the group, delivered to students being given information simultaneously, and that ensured that they were prepared for role. We also realised that the group was likely to provide social benefits for the students as well. The group brought the students together and allowed them to build a network of support between them within one trust. It provided peer support, opportunities to reflect together, clinical supervision and joint educational experiences. We know that these groups have been found to be effective in alleviating burnout, reducing emotional exhaustion, diminishing stress and improving individual skills in coping with it, improving student achievement and learning and reducing distress when work stress is high, all of which underpin the student's ability to learn and develop. So our aims were, our plan was to bring the students together and share the information about the student support groups within a meet and greet session. And that gave the students opportunities to consider what learning they needed, and for us to provide information about what learning was available within the organisation, to tell them about speakers that were available and give them guidance around where they could find information. The students didn't know what they needed to know, so they needed a lot of guidance at that point. And they gave them the meet and greet, gave them the opportunity to get to know one another a little bit before this first session began. So the aims were what we wanted for the students and what we wanted the group to achieve. To facilitate the access to resources, both people and organisational resources that were available within and external to the organisation was our initial aim. We wanted to provide the students with clinical supervision, the presentation of learning opportunities and the occasion for multidisciplinary team members to provide education for the students. We had a catalogue of available resources for casework and clinical practice, and we had an understanding of how external organisations could help support us, so that we could invite them in on an individual basis to the health visiting speech and language therapist, dietitian, safeguarding team, domestic abuse services, and then internal professionals, people who already worked within our organisation. We also invited them in to meet the students, people who had specialist knowledge around child development and who could give lectures on things such as the World Health Organisation growth training, developmental dysplasia of the hip, sleep and behaviour, to name but a few. We also wanted the groups to allow the students to promote exchange of ideas. So we could see the benefit for students of cross-fertilisation of ideas and learning between the students and sharing examples that they'd seen in practice to enhance the understanding of those experiences. We wanted the students to talk to each other at the group, but we also wanted them to be able to talk to members of the team that they were working with and bring that information to the group so that we could really sort of look and analyse what was happening in practice for them. Sometimes we were sharing experiences from our practice which obviously can make everybody feel vulnerable if we're sharing what's happened to us, but in reflecting openly about experiences ensured that we were role modelling that to students, so the importance of reflection, enabling the students to think about what they'd heard and think about the situation that we were explaining to them, and allowed us all together to review and dissect our thinking, and that enhanced the students' ability to analyse information and come to safe and sound decisions in a safe environment, and the safe and sound decisions would impact upon families. We were sharing examples of best practice within that closed environment. We often shared by practice educators to start with, but as students spent more time in practice, they were able to bring their experiences to the group and share those with their colleagues. As we know, the role is in nursing is all about lifelong learning, so the process of talking about our experiences reinforces them. So strengthening our existing knowledge and skills was what we aimed the group to do, as well as learning new ones. And the safe environment that we've referred to before is safe because it's closed. The membership never changes. The group is a group of students who are invited at the beginning of the sessions, the beginning of their training, and are invited all the way through their training, and the group membership is not expected to change, so that they can start to feel safe with the same cohort. And we do know from research that only when members feel safe are they likely to contribute.
So this slide looks at setting up a community of learning. So what are the factors involved in doing that? Well, most importantly, terms of reference need to be set. And by that I mean set out the expectation of the group, the agreements, what is expected of the practice educators, of the group attendees and stroke members, and who will be running the group, who will be chairing the group, and who will be taking the minutes. Next, we looked at the ground rules, and that involved agreeing with each other. Initially, before we have the students in practice, what do we expect we need to put in place to ensure that the group feels safe, runs smoothly, and is respectful? So when the students came out in practice, we then shared the ground rules with them and made any additional changes or took things out that they felt weren't relevant at that time. And just to say, with each cohort, the ground rules and the terms of reference were revisited to see if we needed to make any changes. Next, we had to agree the running of the group, the monthly support meetings, how often. We looked at, should there be once a month, should there be once a fortnight, once every 3 months, and we decided that research shows that really not having it too close together but yet not too far apart, that people forget the focus of the group. So we went for once a month, and we focused on a particular day, which was the last Tuesday of the month, which is quite easy to remember. Also being very mindful that it didn't clash with the days when the students were in university or indeed when they were on holiday. So that ensured that the group would run more smoothly. We looked at the financial implications because with times now we're having to work smarter with reduced costs, limited access to funding. So it was really important that we chose a venue that was free. So we looked at, we did a scoping exercise and looked at venues around the local area to see if we could have access to free parking, if we can use a room that was a reasonable size so we weren't sat on top of each other and not so large that we were rattling around in the room. So, and also that it had some of the mod cons such as a whiteboard that we can use our laptops, etc., and a space to actually do some group work if we needed to, that wasn't just involved sitting around in the group, but we could actually work on slides or large pieces of paper, etc. So whilst that was sorted out, we agreed the venue. I went to look at the venue, spoke to members of staff at the local children's centre. Because I was already known to the children's centre, because we had lots of meetings there, and my colleague Paula was also known there as well, it was easy for them to say, yes, you could use our venue for free. You can also have access to the coffee and the drinks. We just want a contribution from you of anything you feel you want to contribute. So that was also relayed in the terms of reference for the students to be mindful of. And because we already had a good working relationship with the staff at the children's centre, it made it so much easier. And also they were giving quite a lot to us in the room, the access to the car park, etc. We also said to them that because of our skills, we're quite happy to be part of any learning that they did for the families that attended. So the students will also put on special training days such as weaning, breastfeeding, and that would also be supported by ourselves. So it was a win-win for ourselves and the children's centre staff. We also looked at determining the agendas, for example, agreeing that these be sent out in a timely manner so the students can actually do some background reading if they so wish. The minutes will be done in a timely manner as well, and the evaluation forms will be sent out by email and completed at each and every meeting, and then they will be summarised, and this will be distributed by email to all the attendees, including managers, mentors, CPTs, practice educators, and also the university leads, so that they were aware how the students were using their time in the clinical setting. This slide looks at the monthly evaluations and the importance of why we needed to evaluate the support meetings. And it was important on many fronts. First, to show that we were achieving our aims, that what we were doing was successful. It demonstrated the valuable use of time, the students' time, our time, and the organisation's time. It also looked at the results. Were they measurable? Can we show that what we set out to do was being achieved? And actually, were the students getting value for their time, and the organisation getting value for the time that they invested in us, which we're then investing in our students? So we actually looked at breaking it down into some more meaningful categories. So the evaluation sheets themselves had open and closed questions, and these were done, like I said earlier in the this video clip, that these were done at each and every meeting. The students filled them in anonymously and then handed them back to myself and Paula, and we then collated the results of those. We then looked at whether the topics were relevant to the students, so that also came from feedback on the evaluation sheets or just open general discussions during the meeting. And it meant that certain things were tweaked, such as the key speakers. Was it that the key speakers talked at length about maybe an aspect of research that wasn't relevant for the particular area? Or did the students want to know a little bit more about some of the local statistics, such as how does our trust, the area, compare to, say, the national figures, and what else can we do? Are there year-on-year improvements, or have there been some deterioration? And what can we do as frontline staff to address some of those in our clinical roles? We also looked at the methods of teaching, because one size does not suit every occasion. So we're quite strong believer in using PowerPoint, because then we could get snappy information across in a very timely manner. We can have video links, etc. But sometimes, depending on the nature of the training, that was not the suitable style to use. So we had access to flip charts. group work where we all sat around and discussed things together, or sometimes students themselves were part of that learning and training, so we learned from the students as well as from each other. So the feedback from students was very valuable in looking at the type of learning and the way in which we can meet their learning styles and needs. Feedback we found improved the teaching and it built the trust, and it also had a paper trail. So because we use the emails to send out the minutes, the evaluation sheets, the agendas in a timely manner, it also showed that what we were doing at each and every session, we can actually go back and revisit some of the things if needed, just to capitalise on some of the things that were said and make sure that some of the agendas and policies were clearly understood by the students.
The next slide is about positive outcome. So the monthly evaluation by the students were very positive. A Likert scaling was used for the evaluation. So as Pam's described, we've asked for verbal and written feedback. The type of questions that were asked were, what did you learn? Did the training enhance your learning? What could be improved? And what was the least and most useful? We got a 95 to 100% success rating, most people reporting that they're very satisfied with the support group, the speakers and the learning experiences. We had reports from the university course leaders indicating that the group is really valued by students. The feedback was given to the practice teachers at practice teacher update days from the course leaders and was very positive. We also had students sharing their learning from the group at their university through web pages and online student networks. And what the feedback that we got from that was that the students who discussed it with their colleagues in the university, they were telling us that their colleagues also would have liked this kind of support throughout their training. In 2015, a service evaluation was completed around the provision of the support groups, and we use focus groups to do this, and this formed part of my Masters in Health Professional Education, and there is a paper that's been published, and the title of which is Understanding the Student Experience of the Practice Educator-led SCP and Support Groups. And what we found was that when we looked at the themes that the students, when we analysed the data and looked at the themes, there were three main themes that came from the student comments about the group. These being, they felt that the process was educative. They talked about that as filling the theory-practice gap. They were able to learn things that related to practice together. There was a sub-theme called Becoming Resilient Practitioners, and that meant that the group helped them to deal with stress brought about by the stressful nature of the course. The second theme was peer support and emotional nourishment. In a stressful course, this gave the support group gave them time out to evaluate and reflect together. And they also, the third theme was group organisation and planning. They valued the way that the group was set up and the evaluations and ongoing re-evaluation to make sure that the service met their needs. The group also contributed greatly to the provision of supportive evidence required for the students' e-portfolios, pebble pads and learning contracts, and that would be coming from the theory delivered at the support groups. The students reported that attending the group has increased their resilience within practice, increased their motivation, learning together through the process of learning together, improved their ability to reflect on their practice, because we're practicing doing things in the group by having open discussions about experiences. So we're providing them with the ability in a closed group to reflect upon things that have happened to them in practice. And it also gave them a better understanding of how to apply the 4 principles of health visiting to their practice. So what they were saying is the groups allowing them to pull together information in using this protective time or protected time that we give them. Some of the comments made by the students during the focus group were as follows. In relation to peer support, the students said, In a sense, we were all living and breathing the same experiences, kind of sharing the trials and tribulations, which were supportive when we came together. I always left kind of feeling refreshed and able to carry on, really. It was quite sociable as well, a bit of time for us just to get together. And not being shy to share experiences if you've had a bad experience. You know, not being worried that if you say something, people are not going to look at you funny. You should have done it that way. And so in terms of filling the theory-practice gap, what they said was, it bridged that gap. Some of the academic stuff we got in uni, we weren't necessarily getting it in practice, but we got it, practice-related theory, here. So it filled that theory-practice gap. We were taught things we weren't ever going to get taught in uni, all those kind of practical things.
This slide looks at sustaining the group, and it's really important that we sustain the group, and that way we can ensure the longevity of the group. So what did we do to ensure we got to this stage? Well, firstly, we had to ensure that we did all the groundwork, which I explained in the earlier slides, going out, doing a scoping exercise, looking to see if there was something similar being done in the area by another group of health visitors or allied health professionals. I didn't see anything, so I looked further and I looked online and I saw there were similar groups set up elsewhere. Not quite the same, but I adapted some of the formats there and developed some of our own. Also, it was a matter of building a strong business case so that we can then have room for negotiation, ensure that senior managers support what we set out to do, and that our colleagues also support us as well, and hence the students understand the benefits for themselves as well as the patient care. The other thing we had to do was look at the publicity. How do we publicise this group? And how do we ensure that publicity? How do we sustain it? And how do we demonstrate that what we're doing is measurable and effective? So the evaluation sheets was a good way of doing that. Sharing with our networks within and outside the organisation. Having meetings with senior managers so that they understand that it had many benefits, not just for the role of the practice educator, but also for the students going forward, building their resilience, ensuring that they feel less stress in practice, that they have a good rounded education, that it mirrors some of the things that they're being exposed to when out in the clinical setting. They also links them with some of the university stuff that they're being taught as part of their course. And also we copied in the university lecturers within our email so they could see that what we were doing in practice, that they can mirror similar things also within the university setting. So the first thing we did was obviously shared the evaluations, the agenda in a timely manner with the group and also with the wider organisation, including senior managers. We ensured that every group once a month was evaluated and the evaluations were acted upon, so any changes or tweaks needed, we ensured they were done for the next session. And then at each new meeting, we looked back on the meeting before. Was anything there that you didn't understand? Anything needed clarifying? Anything else that you felt we needed to do better next time? Once we'd done that, then we moved on to the agenda for the day. The profile of the group was also kept high on the agenda, as I've also mentioned that we sent emails out to members of the senior management team, universities. We also made sure that it was highlighted in newsletters, websites, bulletins, and also captured in national nursing journals. Paula and myself have both had articles written and published in some of these leading journals such as Nursing Times, Nursing Standard, the Community Practitioner, the Journal of Health Visiting and wider, and some of those research materials will be captured on the slides at the end of this. We also partake in webinars such as this. We went to conferences, we did poster displays, so all the time highlighting the profile of the group, the benefits of the group and how it benefits everybody going forward. The group has been discussed at the Health Visitors Conference and that will be also revisited again later this year. So the sustainability really is about that ongoing reading the profile, making sure that people are aware of the group, that the benefits of the group, and you can't underestimate that. The plans going forward for the future is that now that we've got the students and they're nearing they've finished the cohort 2016-17 have completed their time with us now. So what we've tended to do now is plan ahead for the future. We know from what the students have told us that having a closed group like this has benefited them greatly, and they would like to, when they're going on now into their preceptorship role, that they'll have something very similar going forward. So both Paula and myself are working very keenly, closely with the organisation, see how we can actually do something very similar to student support, but in the role of a preceptorship. We are both working now on clinical supervision and how we can roll that out as group supervision, having again a closed group so that people feel supported, that they could bring forward ideas, share with us their concerns, and then work together for solutions.
So the final slides are about what our students say about the group. So this first one is, I've found the group extremely beneficial. It's helped to add further substance to the theory and skills I'm learning.
Another student, Ashley Appleyard, said, I enjoy the guest speakers that Pamela arranges as they help to throw another perspective on a topic and can often open up debate amongst us, which all add to learning experience.
The practice educators who run the group are dedicated and focused on making the students' experience a positive one. Without the group, I would not have been exposed to many of my learning opportunities that I've received from the Trust so far.
One of the final comments, although there have been many so we had to be really succinct as the ones that we captured, was it has been very invaluable in preparing us for qualification and becoming autonomous practitioners within health visiting. The last slide it shows a photo of the students from a previous cohort, and it's entitled Celebrating Our Students Whilst Building Their Resilience Student Support Group. And we've put this in the slides because it was really quite important to capturing what the focus and the meaning of the group, in that we are celebrating our students because we really value their input, because they're going to be the future health visitors, and they will be giving support for our clients going forward. So at the end of every student support group, we have what we call a celebratory lunch, and the student and ourselves bring a buffet and we all enjoy that together. But before we enjoy the meal, we all sit together and reflect on the year, looked at the benefits of the year, was there anything else we could have done to improve it, and we also look at interview skills for the students because they'll be getting ready for preparing for job interviews. We look at resilience building, and we particularly want to build on skills that they've already got from the past, because these students, remember, have already been qualified. They've done student training to be qualified nurses, and this is an additional training to be a health visitor. These students already have got skills, they've had challenges in the past, and we want to build on some of those factors that they had, some of those skills that they've had to overcome some of these challenges. So it's not like we're teaching them things that they didn't already know, but looking at ways in which they can then build on that and maybe look at share ideas, how we manage things within our practice and how the students manage in their practice going forward. At the end of the presentation, we then give the students a certificate. Certificates is really to say how we appreciate their input, them turning up for these sessions every month and contributing to that, and also say, well, thank you for, you've been so valued to us for the group. If it wasn't for the students, we'd not have the group really. So we give them all a certificate, as you can see in the slide there, and then if funds allow, we do present them with a leadership book or a book that we feel will enable them to grow, so a book on coaching, etc. Then at the buffet, people then arrive who have contributed to the students' learning, such as the mentors, CPTs, some of the team leaders, and also senior managers within the organisation. We have the university leads, they come along as well to share in the celebration, and key speakers from the past. Is there anything else you want to add regarding that?
I don't think so. Thank you very much for joining us.